We've all had those mornings, right? The ones where just everything seems to go wrong. But what happens when your personal morning chaos isn't just about you, but it's about the hundreds of students you have to be a perfect example for? Well, let's dive into one teacher's story about the incredible pressure to be perfect, even when her day is literally falling apart from the moment she wakes up. And this quote right here, this is the heart of the whole conflict. For a student, hey, being late is permissible. It happens. But for a teacher, it's bilkul najayaz, absolutely, totally impermissible. It's this stark double standard that just immediately raises the stakes. We're not just talking about being a few minutes late. We're talking about a professional failure. So that's the real question, isn't it? On one hand, you've got this immense professional pressure to be flawless. And on the other, a very real, very human struggle. How on earth do you balance those two things when it's the one day of the year that absolutely cannot go wrong? Okay, so let's set the scene for this very, very difficult day. The story kicks off not with excitement for a big event, but with a major, painful roadblock.
So just imagine this. It's the morning of the school's annual function, a huge deal for everyone. But our teacher, who's called Appa in the story, has been awake all night with terrible leg pain. The story says even the smallest movement was just agonizing. But she has no choice. She has to get up, she has to get ready. The show, as they say, must go on.
So you have this intense physical pain, but that's just layer one. Now let's talk about how that physical struggle morphs into this incredible professional anxiety, which is where the real pressure cooker starts. This chart just lays it all out perfectly, doesn't it? For the student, being late is jayaz, or permissible. For the teacher, bilkul najayaz, absolutely not allowed. So why? Why is the standard so incredibly different for them? Well, it all comes down to this one single word, misal. A teacher is expected to be a misal, a role model, an example that students are meant to follow. And if the role model herself is late, then what kind of message does that send? It's seen as giving students permission to fail. So this isn't just a job for her, it's this huge responsibility to be the living embodiment of a standard. So with stakes this high, and her body in agony, you'd think she would be rushing around like crazy to get ready, right? Yeah, well, instead, the story takes a turn, focusing on the most unexpected thing that caused the biggest delay of all. And this is where things get really interesting. She's in pain, she's running out of time, but instead of getting things done, she's just waiting. Anxiously, what in the world could be so important that it brings everything to a grinding halt? It all came down to a makeup primer. That's it. She'd asked a student to bring it for her, and she was absolutely convinced that without this one specific product, her entire look for the annual function would be a disaster. So in the middle of all this physical pain and professional duty, her focus just narrows down to this one tiny detail of aesthetic perfection. The narrator of the story makes this really sharp observation here. They say that people who are used to being beautiful just can't stand even the smallest flaw in how they look. It kind of speaks to this universal pressure we all feel to keep up a perfect image, especially when you know all eyes are going to be on you. So just as she's about to throw in the towel and just go without it, her luck completely turns around. The student shows up, primer in hand. The key to her perfect look has arrived. But here's the thing. By solving one problem, that long wait has created a brand new, much bigger one. Okay, let's get into the final mad dash to the finish line. That wait for perfection has now created a new enemy, the ticking clock. And here is the moment of truth. It is 11:10 a.m. The annual function kicks off at 12 p.m. sharp. She has the primer, sure, but she's not dressed. She has no makeup on. She has less than 50 minutes to perform an absolute miracle. This timeline really puts the sheer panic into perspective. At 11:10, she's at ground zero. A few minutes later, the narrator of the story has to jump in and start doing her makeup. Then, with only about 15 minutes left on the clock, her mother, Amy, rushes in to help her get dressed. It is an all-hands-on-deck, frantic race to the finish line. And I love this part because it's not just her struggle anymore, is it? It becomes a team sport. Her family is right there in the trenches with her, racing against time to get the teacher, the masal, ready for her big moment. So after all of that, after the sleepless night of pain, The pressure to be a perfect role model, the high-stakes drama over a little bottle of makeup primer, and that frantic last-minute family scramble, what was the final outcome? This is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Did all of that effort, all that stress, all that teamwork actually pay off? Did she walk into that annual function just as the clock struck 12?
Nope. After everything, she was still late. And isn't that just the most human, relatable ending you've ever heard? All that striving for perfection, all that pressure, all that panic, and in the end, life just gets in the way.
And the story just ends with this little smiley face and a laugh. It's such a funny, perfect punchline. But it also leaves you thinking, in this whole race to be the perfect Misal, the flawless example, how much pressure are we putting on our teachers to be basically superhuman? This one chaotic morning is a small, funny story, but it really reflects this much larger expectation we have for educators to be perfect, even when life, pain, and a missing makeup primer do their best to get in the way.